Dear listeners, we're back with a new story. Get ready for cheating, revenge, and wild relationship drama. The excitement buzzed in my chest as I drove toward the studio where my wife, Emma, was working. The radio played softly, but my mind was elsewhere, filled with images of her radiant smile and the way she lit up when she talked about her modeling gigs. It had been a long week for her, filled with early mornings and late nights, and I wanted to surprise her with a quick visit. Just a few minutes to remind her how much I loved her and to bring her lunch. As I pulled into the parking lot, I could see the tall glass building reflecting the sun, the vibrant colors of the city all around it. I parked and stepped out, feeling a rush of adrenaline. It wasn't just any visit. I had a sandwich from her favorite deli tucked under my arm and a couple of chocolate croissants, a little treat to sweeten her day. The lobby was bustling with people, models and crew members mingling and laughing. I made my way toward the studio, excitement bubbling inside me. As I approached the entrance, I could hear the faint click of cameras and the sound of laughter filtering through the door. I hesitated for a moment, feeling a slight twinge of nervousness. Would she be happy to see me? Or would she be too focused on work? Shaking off the doubt, I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The studio was a hive of activity. Bright lights illuminated the space, casting a glow over the models who posed in various outfits. Emma was sitting on the edge of a table, her hair cascading down her shoulders, wearing a stunning red dress that accentuated her curves. She looked beautiful, radiant, and every bit the confident woman I had fallen in love with. But then, my heart sank. I caught a glimpse of the photographer, Jake, standing too close for comfort, his hand resting on Emma's knee. They were sharing a laugh that felt too intimate, the kind of laughter that twisted something inside me. "Come on, Emma. Give me that look," Jake called out, his voice smooth and commanding. "You know you're the star here, like this?" Emma teased, her eyes sparkling with mischief. She leaned in closer, and for a moment, I stood frozen, disbelief coursing through my veins. "Yeah, just like that. You're killing it," Jake urged, his hand moving slightly as he adjusted the light. I felt as if the floor had dropped out from under me. I wanted to believe it was harmless, but something in the air felt charged with betrayal. I took a step back, unable to process what I was witnessing. The familiar comfort of my love for her turned into a chilling realization. I turned and left the studio, my heart shattering with each step. My mind raced with disbelief, anger bubbling beneath the surface. As I walked to my car, I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling. I couldn't breathe. How could this happen? I was supposed to be the one who supported her career, not the outsider caught in this moment of intimacy. I barely noticed when I got into my car, the engine roaring to life as I sped away, my eyes blurring with unshed tears. A few minutes later, I found myself in the parking lot of a familiar bar, the place where Mike and I often shared our troubles over a cold beer. I stepped inside, the dim lighting offering some solace as I spotted him at our usual booth, his brow furrowing in concern as he saw my face. "Hey, man, what's up?" Mike greeted, his voice steady yet curious. I slid into the booth, my heart still racing. I saw something I can't believe," I managed, my voice shaking. "What happened?" he asked, leaning forward, his eyes searching mine. "I went to surprise Emma at her shoot, and I saw her with Jake. He was, touching her knee, laughing with her like they were more than just co-workers," I stammered, the hurt spilling out. "Whoa," Mike said, his expression shifting to one of empathy. "Are you sure it wasn't innocent?" "Mike, it didn't look innocent," I snapped, frustration boiling over. "It felt so intimate, like I wasn't even there." He nodded, taking a moment to process my words. "Look, you need to confront her. But let's talk this through first. You can't act on impulse when you're feeling like this, right?" I sighed, running a hand through my hair. "I just don't know how to even approach her about this. It feels like everything I thought we had is crumbling." "You have every right to be angry, but don't jump to conclusions without hearing her side first," Mike advised, his voice calming. Just take a breath, okay? As I stared into my drink, I felt the weight of his words settle over me. I had to find a way to process this, to understand what had happened before making any decisions. But deep down, I knew I was on the brink of a confrontation that would change everything. The bar was dimly lit, the kind of place where shadows flickered along the walls, and laughter mingled with the clinking of glasses. I sat in our usual booth, feeling as though the world outside had faded away. My drink sat untouched, condensation pooling on the wooden table as my mind raced with images of Emma and Jake. I could still see the way they laughed together, the way his hand lingered too long on her knee. It was a haunting memory that I couldn't shake. Mike arrived moments later, his brow furrowed with concern. "Hey, man," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh, but it came out strained. "More like a nightmare. I wish I could just forget what I saw." "You didn't tell me the whole story," Mike said, leaning forward. "What happened exactly?" I sighed deeply, rubbing my temples. "I walked in thinking I'd surprise Emma. I had her favorite sandwiches, and I wanted to lift her spirits. But then I see her sitting there with Jake, and they looked so comfortable together. It felt wrong." "Did you talk to her about it yet?" he asked, his tone serious but supportive. "No, I left. I couldn't even stand to look at her. I just drove around for a while, trying to process what I saw," I admitted, the frustration spilling out. Mike nodded, his eyes steady. "That's understandable. But you need to confront her, man. You can't let this fester." "I know," I said, running my fingers through my hair. "But what if she doesn't even care? What if she just laughs it off?" "Then you'll know where you stand," he replied firmly. "But you deserve to hear her side first. Relationships are complicated. You might be missing something important." "Like what?" "An excuse." I shot back, my voice rising. "What's there to explain? She was practically flirting with him. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe he's just a sleazy guy who crossed a line," Mike suggested, his tone calming. "Look, I've known Emma for a long time. She's not like that. But you have to talk to her before jumping to conclusions." "Yeah, I guess you're right," I said, the fight leaving my voice. "I just don't know how to approach her. I feel like my whole world is upside down." Mike leaned back, contemplating. "Start by being honest. Tell her how you feel, what you saw, and why it hurt you. If she cares about you, she'll listen." "I wish it were that simple," I muttered, staring into my glass. "I feel like I'm losing everything." He reached across the table and placed his hand on mine, a gesture of solidarity. "You're not losing everything. You have friends who care about you, and you have to take this one step at a time. Just give her a chance to explain." "Thanks, Mike," I said, appreciating his unwavering support. "I don't know what I'd do without you right now." "Hey, that's what friends are for," he replied with a small smile. "Now, how about we finish those drinks and come up with a game plan? You deserve some clarity." As we began discussing how to approach the conversation, a plan started to form in my mind. I knew I had to talk to Emma, to give her a chance to explain. But even as I considered it, a nagging feeling of doubt lingered in my gut. What if the truth was worse than I imagined? The bar began to fill with more patrons, their laughter and conversations blending into a haze of noise around us. I tried to focus on Mike's words, but my mind kept drifting back to the studio and the image of Emma with Jake. Would I ever be able to look at her the same way again? "Let's get some food," Mike suggested, breaking me from my thoughts. "You need to eat something. It'll help clear your head." "Yeah, okay," I replied, forcing a smile. But as I glanced around the bar, I couldn't help but feel like everything was changing, slipping through my fingers like sand. The following day felt heavier than the last. I woke up with a sense of dread coiling in my stomach, the memories of Emma and Jake replaying like a broken record. I knew I needed to talk to her, but the weight of uncertainty pressed down on me like a lead blanket. After a long shower, I decided to call Mike again. I needed his insight, his ability to help me untangle the emotions swirling inside me. "Hey, man, you okay?" Mike answered, his voice groggy but concerned. "Not really," I admitted. "I keep thinking about what I saw. I want to confront Emma, but I can't shake this feeling that there's more to the story." "Meet me for coffee," he suggested. "Let's figure this out together." 15 minutes later, I found myself sitting across from Mike in a small cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air. The sun streamed through the windows, but it did little to lighten the heaviness in my heart. I stirred my drink absent-mindedly, watching as the steam curled into the air. "All right, spill," Mike urged, leaning forward. "What's on your mind?" "I just can't stop thinking about Jake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I did some digging. Apparently, he has a history of exploiting models. It's all over the internet. Mike raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Exploiting? What do you mean?" "He's known for manipulating women, making them feel special and important," I explained, frustration bubbling up again. "I can't help but wonder if Emma was caught up in something she didn't fully understand." "Dude, that changes things," Mike replied, nodding slowly. "If he's been doing this for years, it's possible she fell into his trap without realizing it. But you need to talk to her, like, now." I sighed deeply, my heart aching at the thought. What if she doesn't even care? What if she's just as guilty? "Then you'll have your answer," he said firmly. "But you owe it to yourself and her to find out. You're not just looking for closure, you're looking for the truth." I took a sip of my coffee, the warmth spreading through me but failing to soothe the turmoil inside. How do I even start this conversation? What do I say? "Be honest," Mike said. "Tell her what you found out, how it makes you feel, and ask her about Jake. It's okay to show your vulnerability." "Vulnerability?" I scoffed, running a hand through my hair. "I feel like a fool, Mike. I can't believe I thought we had something perfect." "Dude, don't beat yourself up," he replied gently. "It's not your fault she was in a situation that got out of hand. Sometimes people get manipulated. It doesn't make you a fool, it makes you human." I stared out the window, watching couples stroll by, hand in hand, lost in their own worlds. What if she tells me she fell for him? What if she says she's been unhappy? "Then you'll have to face that reality," Mike said. "But at least you'll know. Ignorance is the worst kind of pain." "I hate this," I muttered, frustration boiling over. "I just want everything to go back to normal." "I get it, man. But you have to deal with it. You can't run away," Mike urged. "You deserve to know where you stand." "I know," I sighed. "You're right. I'll talk to her tonight." "Good," he said, a sense of relief washing over his face. "And I'll be here for you, no matter what happens." We finished our coffee in silence, each lost in our thoughts. The cafe buzzed around us, but all I could think about was Emma and the impending conversation that would decide the fate of our relationship. Later that day, I found myself pacing in my apartment, rehearsing what I would say to Emma. My heart raced, a mixture of fear and hope swirling inside me. As the evening approached, I finally texted her to meet me at our favorite park. I needed a neutral ground, a place where we could talk without distractions. When Emma arrived, her face lit up as she saw me, but the smile faded as she noticed my serious expression. "Hey, what's going on? You look tense, can we sit?" I gestured to a nearby bench, and she nodded, worry creeping into her eyes. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Finally, I took a deep breath, summoning the courage I needed. "I saw something the other day at your shoot," I started, my voice steady. "Something that broke my heart." Her expression shifted, concern etched on her face. "What did you see?" "Emma, I saw you with Jake," I said, forcing myself to meet her gaze. It looked too close for comfort. She inhaled sharply, her eyes widening. "Oh God. I can explain." "I don't want to jump to conclusions," I said quickly. But I did some research, and I found out he has a reputation for exploiting models. I want to know what really happened between you two. Jake, he can be very persuasive, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I swear, I didn't mean for it to go that far. He made me feel special, like I was more than just a model. It was never my intention to hurt you. I need to understand why you let it happen, I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. Did you ever think about what it would do to us? I was confused, she confessed, tears pooling in her eyes. I wanted to make a name for myself, and I thought maybe I could handle it. But I never wanted to hurt you, I promise. The vulnerability in her voice struck a chord within me. I could see the fear and regret, but the trust was already shaken. Emma, I can't ignore what I saw. Even if you were manipulated, you still crossed a line. Her gaze dropped to the ground, shame washing over her face. I know I messed up. I should have been stronger, but I got caught up in it all. I just wanted to be accepted. As we sat in the fading light, the weight of our conversation loomed over us. I realized that the truth was complicated, filled with layers of pain and confusion. But it didn't change the fact that our relationship had been fractured. I need time to think, I finally said, my voice heavy with sorrow. I just don't know if I can move past this. Please, she pleaded, her voice cracking. I love you. I'll do anything to make this right. I don't know if love is enough, I replied, my heart aching. Right now, I just need some space. With that, I stood up, leaving her sitting on the bench as the darkness crept in around us. I walked away, the weight of my decision settling over me like a heavy fog. The truth was more complicated than I ever anticipated, and as I stepped into the night, I realized the road ahead would be anything but easy. The following days felt like an eternity. I found myself wandering through the city, lost in thought as I replayed the conversation with Emma over and over again in my mind. I had always envisioned a future with her, building a life together, sharing laughter, supporting each other's dreams. But now, that dream felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the painful reality of betrayal. Every morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I went to work, but my mind was elsewhere, consumed by the question of whether I could ever trust her again. Friends reached out, but I brushed them off, wanting to avoid the conversations that might reveal the turmoil within me. I just needed time, but time alone wasn't providing the clarity I craved. Finally, I reached out to Mike again. Can we meet? I texted him late one evening. I needed his insight once more, needed to vent my frustrations and fears. Of course. Where? He replied almost instantly. Same cafe as before. I suggested, my fingers tapping nervously on my phone screen. See you there at 7, he wrote back. That evening, I arrived at the cafe, my heart racing. The familiar buzz of conversations filled the air, but I felt isolated in my thoughts. Mike was already seated at our usual booth, a cup of coffee in front of him. Hey, man. You look like you've been through the ringer, he said, concern etched on his face as I slid into the booth. Honestly, I don't even know where to start, I admitted, rubbing my temples. I keep thinking about Emma and what she said. I want to believe her, but it's hard to shake this feeling of betrayal. Mike nodded, his expression serious. What are you leaning towards? Are you thinking of reconciling or walking away? I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive her. I know she was manipulated, but the other part of me feels like trusting her again would be foolish, I confessed, my voice laced with frustration. I just don't know if I can handle the risk. Have you talked to her since that night? He asked, leaning back, arms crossed. No. I've been avoiding it. I don't know what to say, I replied, glancing down at my hands. I feel so lost. What if I give her another chance and she hurts me again? I don't think I could survive that. That's a valid concern, Mike said thoughtfully. But you need to ask yourself if you truly believe she wants to make things right. Sometimes people make mistakes. It doesn't excuse the betrayal, but it can help you see the bigger picture. I sighed deeply, looking around the cafe as couples laughed and shared stories. I want to believe that she loves me, that she's willing to fight for us. But how do I know it's not just empty words? Trust your instincts, he encouraged. And maybe you should consider counseling. Having a neutral party can help you both process everything and figure out if there's a way forward. Counseling? I echoed, surprised. Do you think that's really necessary? Think of it as a way to communicate better, Mike explained. It can provide a safe space to express your feelings and fears. It might help you both understand each other's perspectives more clearly. I pondered this for a moment, weighing the idea. Maybe that's a good idea. But I just don't know if I'm ready to face her again. Then take your time, Mike said gently. You don't have to rush into anything. Just make sure you're doing what's best for you. The conversation lingered in my mind as I left the cafe that night. I could feel the heaviness in my chest easing slightly, the prospect of counseling offering a glimmer of hope. But I also knew that every step I took forward would be filled with uncertainty. The next day, I found myself at home, staring at my phone. Emma had texted me several times, asking if we could talk, if I was okay. I read her messages with a mix of longing and anger, torn between my love for her and the pain she had caused. Finally, I decided to respond. Can we meet tomorrow? I need to talk. My heart raced as I hit send, and the weight of anticipation settled over me. I couldn't avoid this conversation any longer. I needed to make a decision. When we met the next day at the park again, the atmosphere felt charged. Emma arrived, her eyes searching for mine, a mix of hope and fear on her face. Thank you for coming, she said softly, her voice trembling. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I've been thinking a lot about everything. About us. Me too, she said, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I know I hurt you, and I'm so sorry. I've been reflecting on my actions, and I want to make things right. Do you really mean that? I asked, my voice low. Or is it just what you think I want to hear? I mean it, she insisted, stepping closer. I realize now how easily I let myself be swayed. I let Jake make me feel important, but it was a facade. I love you, and I want to prove that to you. I want to believe you, I replied, searching her eyes for sincerity. But trust is hard to rebuild. I don't want to live in fear that you'll hurt me again. I understand, she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. If that means counseling, I'm all in. I want us to heal together. Her words struck a chord within me, igniting a flicker of hope. But there was still a part of me that hesitated. I need time to think about this. I can't promise anything right now. That's okay, she replied softly, her voice thick with emotion. I'll wait. I'll do anything to show you that I'm committed to us. As I stood there, looking into her eyes, I realized that this decision was one of the hardest I had ever faced. The possibility of forgiveness and rebuilding felt daunting, but the thought of losing her completely terrified me even more. I need to talk to you about one more thing, I said finally, gathering my thoughts. I've been considering counseling. I think it might help us sort through this mess together. Emma's face lit up with relief. I think that's a great idea. I'll do whatever it takes to help us heal. I nodded, feeling a slight sense of relief wash over me. It was a small step forward, but a step nonetheless. Let's start this process together, but I need you to be patient with me. It's going to take time. I can do that, she replied, her eyes filled with determination. Thank you for giving us this chance. As I walked away from the park that day, a mixture of hope and apprehension swirled within me. The path ahead was uncertain, but I knew I had made the first move toward healing. The hard decision to confront our issues was just the beginning, and I couldn't help but wonder if we could rebuild what had been broken.